It's an ArcGIS story map. I can give you this link, but this just shows all the squares are historic earthquakes in Italy. So if you guys need to do a project, it's a little bit of both. It's basically like, here's my little moment magnitude calculator. It's, if you go too deep in the earth, it's the material's too hot, so it won't be brittle. It won't break. It just wants to flow. So like if I just increase my size here a little bit. So sorry, let's just go back 150 maybe. But if so, we don't have the area. But if you want to get like this moment magnitude to be a 10, like let's say we did 300 kilometers long, and then we did like 300 kilometers wide, still only an 8. So we'd have to, and the width, like 300 kilometers down in the earth, is too hot, too fluid. So we're sort of stuck. Maybe the deepest ones you could get would be 100. So then you'd have to be like, well, okay, 3,000 kilometers long, still only an 8.5. Like we can't get it. We'd have to, like, if it was 3,000 by 3,000, like if we broke deep into the mantle, 9.5. It's just like there's the area required starts to bust into the middle of it. And we know that Earth's like 6,000 kilometers in diameter or in radius, right? So even if you went the full 6,000, 9.72, so maybe you break it almost in half. You can get it. Yeah, good question. Other questions?
Not possible.
Good question. That's like the Superman. One of the movies was about that. Lex Luthor was going to put a nuclear bomb right in the right place. It maybe in some faults are really close to failures. Like you just have to blow on them and then they'll go. So maybe if we knew well enough where the weakest spot of the fault was, you could try to put some kind of perturbation there, like a nuclear explosion, and maybe it would push it over the edge. But I think in my view, if you want to trigger an earthquake, you're better off using something like wastewater injection. It's actually easier to put a lot of mass into the earth in a certain place that might push it. And because the problem in a way with the nuclear explosion is that it's too focused. It's like it's a small zone, right? It's all in 100 meter radius. Of course, it's all like totally molten rock, but whereas you might want to influence more like a kilometer or a couple kilometers of the fault surface to push it. So that's probably better for your nefarious plans. Yeah, I mean the problem has been that earthquake prediction kind of got a bad rap or bad reputation because it was not used well, and we'll see actually in a moment when I talk about Lockwood, this is an issue. So we've kind of actually pulled back on earthquake prediction because that means you have to know magnitude, timing, and location well enough to be useful. So what we tend to say is more forecasting. So it's sort of semantics maybe, but it's more forecasting. We tend to speak about it in probabilistic terms, and we tend to have a longer time scale. Like I'm pretty sure at 90% confidence in the next 50 years there's going to be a magnitude 7 earthquake in California on the San Andreas Fault. 50 years is good enough to like do certain kinds of planning, but you're not making a decision for today on that because there's other risks like getting in your car is much higher than the short time. Okay. But we're working on it. The other thing is earthquake early warning. So there is now, once the earthquake occurs, we can watch what's happening in the near field and fairly quickly within seconds kind of have warnings get out. And that's not prediction, not forecasting, but it's something that's useful for. Really good question. Some people have played around with it. The main thing that people are doing right now is for induced seismicity. So what we know is like if you're doing wastewater injection and you're pumping up the crust with a bunch of water, you can trigger a bunch of earthquakes, but we still struggle to predict when exactly. So the idea now is to pump it up, kind of tell everybody, okay, guys, we're going to have a bunch of earthquakes in this area for the next 6 months. but and so you get the operating pressure high enough that you drive all these earthquakes, and then you run at a lower pressure for whatever work you're doing, and you sort of released all the faults that are going to go. So it's kind of related activity. I think Keto's looking at me like I need to move on to some Italian earthquakes, guys. But I appreciate your questions. Let's, because we might address a few of these. Let's go right away to, I have a bunch, but I was going to do L'Aquila just to make sure we do L'Aquila.